Yes, people, in this Financial Times article, we're going to take a look at Nigel Farage and the Reform UK Party and how they might be able to balance the British books in the terms of the UK economy. So, Nigel Farage has pledged to balance the budget, promising that Reform UK would never borrow to spend. If it came to power, raising questions over the spending cuts or tax increases needed to achieve this goal, as well as the precise definition of the pledge itself. In a statement, Farage said, "Reform will never borrow to spend, as Labour and the Tories have done for so long. Instead, we will ensure savings are made before implementing tax cuts." It marks the first time Reform has articulated something resembling a fiscal rule. Now, how big is the UK deficit? Economists have warned that Farage's pledge would mean slashing public spending or slamming up taxes if it referred to matching overall spending with revenues. Such a pledge would sit uneasily with the current state of the public finances. The UK government borrowed £81.8 billion in the 5 months to August and £145 billion in the fiscal year ending March 2025, according to official statistics. Now, the Office for Budget Responsibility, the UK's official watchdog, projects the UK budget will remain in deficit through to 2030, albeit narrowing from today's nearly 5% of GDP to 2% at the end of the decade. The last UK budget surplus was in 2000-2001. So you can see here on this chart, the UK is forecast to run a deficit until the end of the decade. There you have it. This pledge would imply more aggressive tax hikes and spending control than currently planned, said Andrew Wishart, a UK economist at Berenberg Bank. Investment spending would be the easiest place to cut spending quickly, but risks harming the UK's long-term growth, explained Wishart, noting that to reduce spending, Reform would probably have to make the social safety net of welfare much less generous and narrow the range of diseases the NHS will treat. Obviously, welfare is always a target for a lot of government cuts. The Labour Party did try and do something around that. For example, the pensioners' winter fuel cut allowance, and that caused an uproar, and they eventually had to reverse it. So, ruling out borrowing in any circumstances is foolish, as it would make economic downturns far worse. A lot of this basically depends on the definition of the deficit. Now, the implications would be very different if the pledge referred to the current budget balance, which excludes investment. The Labour government's main fiscal rule is to balance this by 2029 or 2030. A person close to Reform did not specify if Farage was talking about the current or overall budget in his comments, despite also saying, "We won't be borrowing extra to fund day-to-day spending," in an apparent reference to balancing the current budget. If the government's plan was basically to be achieved and Reform was to win a general election that falls into the fiscal year 2029 or 30, it would not actually have to tighten policy at all, as Labour would have done all the hard work for it already, said Sandra Horsfield, an economist at Investec. However, the outlook for public finances has deteriorated from the last forecast. Moreover, Reform is leading in the polls, and if the general election were to be held any earlier than in the fiscal year 2029-2030, Reform would have a tougher job on its hand and actually need to cut deficits when in power itself, added Horsfield. Now, some economists say that Reform's pledge to balance the budget, rowing back from promising large tax cuts marks an important shift in approach. It's a sign the party is starting to take account of the restraints imposed by the financial markets, basically being more realistic, said Paul Dales, chief UK economist at Capital Economics. It suggests a more fiscally restrained posture than previously indicated. Early in the month, Kent's local authority, one of the 10 English councils seized by Nigel Farage, right-wing populist party, at local elections in May this year, warned it was likely to raise council tax rates next year because Reform UK had struggled to find big savings. The latest pledge points to an increasing degree of realism, perhaps in the recognition of the need to keep markets on side, said Horsfield. Farage, whose statement comes ahead of his first big speech on the economy next month, also said reform remained committed to ending net zero policies, reducing welfare for non UK citizens, and tackling what it sees as waste at the Bank of England. He also pledged to bring back high earners, support small businesses, and revive domestic oil and gas production. There you have it, folks. Doesn't matter whether it's Reform UK or Labour or the Greens, the British economy is struggling, and it's a tough job to balance the books right now. Whoever the Chancellor or whoever might be in charge of the economy in the coming years. What do you think? Can Nigel Farage and Reform UK actually walk the walk and balance the books? Do let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Catch you in the next one.